Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. No, you are seeing straight. We are Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul. I am just Debbie because we have the pleasure of having Del as our interviewee today, and I get to interview her, and you get to hear all about the three principles. But before we get started with that, a couple of things. I would like to introduce myself. I'm one of your co-hosts. I am Debbie Carlin Boyle. I am certified as a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, and an integrative nutrition, health, and wellness coach. And I really just help people find the balance in their life with just everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. And my co-host is Adey-Jones. And Del is a certified transformational coach who also is a teacher of the three principles. She's a practitioner and teacher of the three principles. And she helps her clients achieve psychological well-being in all the areas of their lives, regardless of their external circumstances. And we want to invite you to be part of our show today you can call in to talk to us at 323-284-7826 or go to our Facebook page where we're streaming right now, make a comment, ask a question to Del. And without further ado, I'm going to again introduce my co-host. Will you please welcome Adey-Jones?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Del.
Hi. It feels funny not to introduce myself, but I like being introduced.
I know.
You should carry on doing that.
Yeah, let's do that. We can just bounce back and forth every week.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to our show.
Thank you. So thank you for having me.
So one of the reasons why we're doing this is because Del and I do have our own practices, and we are both coaches within our own rights. And we both practice different modalities, and we want to impart the information to our audience. And so every once in a while, we're going to shift gears, and we're going to change places and interview each other. And
Yay.
Today's one of those times. So Del is our special guest today, and we are going to talk all about the three principles. And what are the three principles, just to get started, Del?
Well, first of all, the three principles are of mind, consciousness, and thought. But before we go there, I was going to give you a little bit, just like we do with our other guests, where we go a little bit into their history
of who
they are.
Yes, we
what
need to
they
do that. That's right.
How
did you get here?
Exactly, and how I got here. So basically, I grew up in a very unconventional family. And as much as it was a lot of fun, it was also very painful at times. And I grew up, feeling, I just didn't fit in. I had a lot of insecurities. I grew up without a father.
Well, let's get more into why it was unconventional. Tell our audience that you...
So I had a wonderful mother, an amazing mother. I'm one of 7 children. We also, I grew up without a father. He had literally nothing to do with us on any level. And and he lived quite close by. So we would.
And did you always know that from the beginning?
Yes,
that
I
he
knew
was close.
Yeah, yes.
That had to just add salt to
well,
the wound.
it did.
You know?
It was like you were literally invisible.
Yeah.
And then as a child, I took that on to mean that there was something wrong with me.
Of course.
That if I had been prettier or more,
You weren't
enough, anything I could be, then maybe I would have caught his attention. So I basically, that was just a belief system that I decided was true and grew up with. And it resulted in a lot of dysfunctional behavior on my part, let's put it that way. And
by right.
yeah, and then also my mother, because she wasn't helped financially by her father, she opened up our home to a home for mentally handicapped people. And at one point when we were very young, we all lived in little caravans. The American word is trailers, but tiny little trailers in our backyard while she converted our home into a home for mentally handicapped people.
And that's doubly tough.
That was tough too. But then she was so amazing. And before we knew it, by the time I was 9 years old, we were moving into a giant, great big mansion full of about 50 residents at the time. But we were all scattered around this great big rambling mansion, and there was no real hub of a home or a family.
Yeah.
My mother was so busy being parents to not just 7 children, a parent rather,
But
single
to the
parent.
50
But
patients.
to the 50 residents that lived
Yeah.
with us too that needed incredible care. And I think, as you know, I've expressed to you before, I'd like to say that it was all wonderful, and I was really generous and shared my mother with everybody. But I was pretty jealous growing up
Of
that
course.
I didn't get her
They were
attention.
getting the attention and you weren't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I first came here, when I was about 21, I definitely had gone through some major struggles as a teenager. Almost not even knowing if I wanted to be on the planet. I just felt that I didn't fit in that well, and wasn't even then. It wasn't that there was something wrong with the world. It was something wrong with me, that I didn't seem to be able to navigate it that well.
Teenage years are so difficult,
They
and
are.
no matter what. But with all
Exactly.
these extra circumstances around you, that makes
But-
it even more difficult.
But the beauty was it put me on a search. I mean, I was on a search to find out what all of this meant. You know, I needed to make sense out of my life, and I started at a very early age. I started at 21, working with people like John Bradshaw and his sort of Healing the Shame That Binds, his workshops, and I think I mentioned Beverly DeAngelis and just a lot of others. Amazing, amazing work. So I'd always been on that path, and you know, even though I got married and had children and had this wonderful life, there was still this search in me to really understand that, you know, I was still struggling, I would say. And I did spiritual psychology when about 10 years ago now, I graduated from USM. And
So that's the University
of Santa Monica. And that was very helpful, as you know, that plus 30 plus years of therapy.
Yeah.
All of these things really contributed to me having a highly functional life, given you know.
And how so? What did it help you do? What do you think is the main thing that really helped you to move forward and overcome and know you are enough?
I mean, you just, especially at USM, I mean, it's a 2-year program, and it's experiential. So you're going, you're talking about your issues again and again and again and again. And there was definitely movement. I definitely highly recommend it. It was a wonderful program.
Everybody that's gone through
Yeah,
it says the
it's
same
wonderful.
thing. Yes.
But there were a couple of other things that were really, really helpful for me too. And one of them was I worked with Debi Ford, and we did a lot to do with the shadow work. And
what's that?
So Carl Jung, he talks about the shadow being the part of ourselves that it's the disowned aspects of ourselves, either consciously or unconsciously. It's the traits that, you know, society says are bad or undesirable. They are the ones that anger, you know, little girls shouldn't be angry or should be pushy.
Oh, okay.
They should, you know, have good manners, not to be greedy, not to be selfish, all of those personality traits that we deem as bad. And depending on where you grew up, I mean, sometimes it's more acceptable and other times it's not. But for me, you know, having gone to a convent at a very early age, the nuns used a lot of shaming to keep you in control.
yeah.
So and plus, you know, the dynamics of my family growing up, I grew up with a lot of shame. And so I was always trying to be perfect and denying or consciously or doing everything I could to not be those bad qualities that I thought that human beings had.
Right.
And what the beauty of the shadow work is that you get to reclaim all those qualities. It's just part of our humanity. There's nothing wrong with being a bit greedy sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, being angry, if you're being hurt or something is happening, there's nothing wrong with those very natural responses. Or to speak up and say, that's not appropriate. It's like, again, in England, it was very much sort of, be
Not
quiet.
proper,
Don't upset an adult.
Talk unless you're spoken
exactly.
to, kind of
and,
thing.
the adults were always right, and, know your place and things like that.
That would be very frustrating.
Yeah.
But it seems that doing that also, it's all within respect of what, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's like cultural norms.
Yeah,
We're conditioned. I mean, the point
exactly.
is we're conditioned.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I know we all need to sort of behave ourselves in certain places and times.
Yeah,
but at the same time, if it's really damaging you at your core and you believe that you're bad if you have those very, very natural traits, then it's not good.
No.
And what I loved about the shadow work is it really did just... we got to embrace all aspects of ourselves. But anyway, those are two sort of things I went through. And what I'm getting to is it was really when I discovered the 3 principles that it made the most incredible shift in my my understanding of myself and how I show up in the world.
Which is great, because that creates how you can help others and how they show up in the world.
And again, as I say, there are layers. I mean, I did so much work with all the other, as I say, 30 years of therapy, and all the other training I did was definitely worth me going through. And for me, the 3 principles was just the sort of icing on the
right.
cake.
They just hit the
absolutely.
spot for you, literally.
Yeah.
So going back, and now that we know your roots and what brought you here, so what are the 3 principles, and then we'll get into all of it.
Okay, so I'll preface this by saying don't pay too much attention to what I'm going to say now, because the understanding of the 3 principles, originally there was a Scottish welder called Sydney Banks, who in 1973, he had what was described as an enlightenment experience, a spontaneous enlightenment experience, where the way that we as human beings see life, it became very clear to him. And what became clear to him is nothing, it has, it's not that he discovered something new. It's a lot of world religions and spirituality will point in this direction. But the way he saw it was in such an incredible, simple way.
And he was a cynic, right? He was very negative and cynical.
No, I wouldn't say he was negative. He had a 9th grade education.
Okay.
He just wasn't very worldly. He'd never shown any interest in spirituality or psychology. He was a simple man, a very ordinary man.
Basic.
And he was, going through some issues in his marriage, and he had gone to see somebody speak. So it was recommended, this guy's really good with relationships. And it wasn't even the person he went to speak to, in fact, that sort of triggered something in him. It was actually one of the other participants, another person that was going there, participating in this workshop, who he was talking to, who happened to be a therapist. And he was saying to the therapist, he was moaning about his problems and everything. And the therapist turned around and said, "Oh, Sid, you're not insecure. You just think you are." And something in that comment... Something in that comment just sat with Sid. And it was later, I think within a couple of days, that he had this sort of, want of another word, this incredible enlightenment experience where the information was downloaded into him. He experienced this sort of white light, and he felt that he really understood how the human psyche and spirituality and psychology work together. And as I said, he called it the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. And that's where things get sticky.
Yeah, because they all sound like the same thing.
Well, they
could be your mind is your thought and your consciousness, right?
Well, mind, in the way that he was referring to mind, is he talks about mind as the energy behind life. The another word for that is the intelligence behind life, the universe, God, spirit.
Okay.
All of those words are what he calls mind. It's mind with a capital M.
Okay.
And then
energy.
And then energy. It's the energy behind life.
Behind life.
And then thought is something that is our ability to create ideas from that energy. So
Okay.
it's our, we all have thoughts. We have
Right.
hundreds of thousands of thoughts a day.
Constant
thoughts. But thought, and this is why I say just don't get too hung up on these words, because if you get hung up on them, they'll take you down the wrong path.
Well, you try, yeah.
So then
trying to make
unconsciousness is just really our awareness, our level of awareness and our ability to really make sense out of what we're perceiving. Okay.
Okay.
So now I've said that, it's a trilogy, or a trinity rather. It's not, one isn't better than the other. They work together. And just like electricity, you know, when we put the light on and it, you know, everything becomes clear.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. We don't need to understand how electricity works to get the benefit of it.
Right.
So I tell my clients, don't get hung up on the word mind, thought, and consciousness, or those three words rather, because then you'll start going down this rabbit hole of the intellect, of trying to figure them out and what do they mean and things like that. So the important thing to realize is that it's and I'll go further as I describe what this understanding points to. It'll make more sense rather than trying to figure out the three words.
Because you say that you should understand the three principles through the heart and not the intellect.
Yeah.
So, and you say listen for the feeling, not the words.
Yes.
So what do you mean by
Well,
that?
because the thing is, it's like, you know, when we listen to music, we're not hanging on to every note. We're not listening to the words. I mean, sometimes we listen to words, but we're really feeling it. We're
the
moved.
vibrations of it.
We're moved by the sound and the feeling it's invoking in us. And the same way with the three principles. When you understand what it's pointing to, what it's saying about the human condition and how we perceive life, that's all you need to know. You don't need to understand the definition of what mind and what consciousness and what thought means, because that's just going to get you stuck in your head, and you're going to keep
discombobulated if you try to do that.
Yeah. So basically, so why I say it should be understood with the heart is, again, as you listen to it and you listen to it described, listen with an openness. Because if you listen with your mind, you'll start going, you'll look for the yeah buts. I always say the yeah buts, or the but that doesn't apply here.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because
really,
we all do that.
We all do that, but that's our minds.
So that's our minds dismissing a thought.
It's no.
If we say yeah, but we're
but
like
it's,
we're changing gears, kind of.
well, let me describe what the understanding is,
Okay.
so that people understand, because then that's where the yeah buts come in as well. Yeah, that's all great. That sounds great, but there are exceptions to that. The yeah buts are the exceptions.
Okay.
And so what we are trying to say is that the way we're brought up to believe that our outside world impacts us, and what is happening in the outside world is causing us to feel a certain way. Like, I feel really good today because somebody flirted with me at the gas station. Or I feel awful today because, you know, my children didn't listen and they don't respect me. So now I lost my job, so therefore I'm really sad. My boyfriend broke up with me and I'm devastated and nobody will ever love me again. Now, and we have all these feelings of disappointment, hurt, rejection, and all of these feelings, and we think those feelings are coming from the outside, or our anger is because my children aren't listening to us, or our upset rather.
When in fact they're coming from the inside.
Well, they're coming from the inside. Not to say that the outside world isn't happening outside of us, it is. But clearly, you know,
we have control.
It's not so much that we have control. What it is we all respond differently. You know, they used to say, well, like two children or twins, they used to say, let me describe it this way. So if it's all the outside in, then how do you explain that twins growing up in the same family, one can suffer from debilitating depression and the other one can be I'm the extrovert twin. I'm the one that, you know, is happy
all the time.
So
and joy.
It's clearly not just the environment they're in. It's how they perceive the environment they're in and what they make of it.
Yes.
And so the reason I'm saying that, so we call that the outside in is when we feel that the outside is causing our emotions, and
versus
what we
the inside
out,
yeah.
which is knowing that things are happening in our environment. We have a thought about what is happening in our environment. Either that's good, that's bad, that's, whatever. Immediately, almost simultaneously, we have an emotional reaction to that. So it seems like it's coming from the outside in, but it's actually coming from the thought we're having in that moment about what's happening on the outside.
And do people, so the question would be, when you do attach an emotion to the thought, are we trained to do that from early
it's just
childhood?
natural. That's immediate.
Okay.
Immediately.
It's immediate?
Yeah,
and
we have no control over that.
We have no control.
Not initially. We have a thought, we have a feeling. But what this awareness points to is that, let me just say another thing. We have those hundreds of thousands of thoughts that just keep flying through us as I hit the mic.
Right. But there's certain ones that stop and grab us, right?
Exactly, because that's our human nature. It'd be lovely if we remembered all the good thoughts, and we do.
Yeah.
But we tend to focus on some of the more negative thoughts. I think it's due to our survival instinct.
I think going to say.
Yeah, I
it's
think
got something to do with the things that we know we have to work on, because the good thoughts just kind of flow.
Yeah, but sometimes too we attribute all our power to the outside. Even if we're having good thoughts, we'll say things like, or the good thought is coming because I met the perfect guy, or I have so much money in the bank, or I just bought myself a new sports car, or whatever it is. We're aware that we are having good thoughts, but we attribute it to something outside of ourselves. As equally so as when we're having negative thoughts, we attribute it to outside of ourselves.
We blame too.
Well, exactly.
Negative thoughts always for me, and this is where the practicing three principles come in. Could be really good for me. Is my negative thoughts tend to be thrown off on somebody else, that they're the reason for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and most of us do. Different. It is the human condition. We do. It's our defense mechanism. It's like, but what happens then is we waste all this energy trying to change the other person or the external event so that we can feel better. And what we don't realize is that if we just understand that the reason we feel bad in that moment is because we're having a negative thought. And this is not positive psychology. This is not saying that you've got to change every negative thought into a positive thought. It's not saying that at all. It's actually just acknowledging that we are constantly getting new thought, constantly coming through us. And what it's saying is, don't be at the mercy of those thoughts. Know that our natural state is to be in harmony, is to be in happiness, is to experience self-confidence, is to have peace of mind, self-acceptance, joy, happiness. That's our natural set point. And the only thing that ever takes us away from that is when we believe a thought that is saying that's scary, or
and then we give a life to that thought that takes on, that manifests more negative thoughts. That keeps you from moving forward. Keeps you from that joy and that happiness.
But what happens is, if we just know that it's just a thought, and just as much as the good thoughts come in, the negative thoughts, they just flow through us. We have no control. We don't get to choose what thoughts come through us. We do have a choice on the ones we want to hang on to, and ones we want to experience more of. But when they just pop in and it's like we feel, down for a moment or whatever it is, we don't fight that. We don't go, oh, okay, how can I change that into a positive thought? Or let me analyze that thought. Where did that come from? Oh, it came from my childhood. It came from that person. We just go, oh, we're having a negative thought right now. And it's going to pass, just like all thoughts pass. They flow through us. Some scientists say they flow through us at, I think it's 25 to 50,000 to 100,000 even, I've heard. Thoughts, random thoughts going through us every day.
Is that what you mean when you say we're living in the feeling of our thinking?
Yes.
So
it's we have to have a thought to have a feeling.
Right. So
we think it's coming from the outside, but it's not. It's coming from a thought.
Right.
So when I say we're living in the feeling of our thinking, depending on our thinking, that will be how we are experiencing life. And sometimes, those thoughts can be negative and we will feel like shit,
Yeah.
to be honest. But if we're having a good thought and we feel good, then that's to do with that. So yes, so we are literally, the way that we view life is moment to moment, thought by thought.
Experiencing our reality.
Our reality.
And if we want to I don't want to say manipulate because that's not a good word.
No, you just,
but if we want to guide, if you will, like our thoughts to let it be fleeting if it's negative, is there a practice for that, a meditation? Is there a way?
We don't, there's no tools, no gimmicks, no meditations. I always say we sort of almost live from a meditative point. So 'cause when we meditate, we usually sort of, focus on the breathing, allow the thoughts to float through, notice when you're attaching to a thought, and then come back to the breath and get centered. So, but we actually say that this is how we live our lives. I mean, there's no need to pay attention when you feel good. I mean, feel good.
Yeah, just enjoy the moment.
Enjoy the moment. But if we feel, we're not feeling so good, we're aware that it's coming from a thought. But instead of, like I say, analyzing that thought, where did that thought come from? The more energy you put on it, the more you make it stick around.
Okay.
The more that you can just like in meditation, the more that you can say, oh, I'm believing that thought right now. I'm putting a lot of, importance on that thought. We just go, oh, I see that I'm really attaching to that thought. Let me come back to center and know that thought will pass. I don't have to do anything about it. We naturally will go back to that incredible, we call it an innate well-being, that place inside of us that exists in all of us, where we have that beautiful peace, calm, peace of mind. We feel wonderful.
So when the saying time heals,
Yes.
is that relative, or should this not, it shouldn't be given time. It should just be,
I'm not going to get into the whole time doesn't exist. But time heals. I think it's funny you should say that, because yes, I suppose what it means is, the time it takes for a new thought to come in, it won't feel the same.
Okay, right.
But it's not to say that those thoughts won't revisit us, that, the second we're not thinking something, say we're thinking about, say, an ex-husband or something, and there's some pain around that. Not Debbie.
Are you looking at me?
No, I'm not looking at you. But
okay, let's say that. Go ahead, use me.
Just as a random,
just deal with me.
A random thing.
Help me, please.
But when you're not thinking
Yeah.
about something that they may have done, or that you think is creating that upset in you, when you somehow get distracted and you think about something else, you don't feel that pain.
No.
It's only when you're having that thought.
Yeah, I create it.
So it's but we don't blame ourselves. We don't say, oh God, why are we having that thought again? I thought I was over this. Time should have healed this. We don't say that. We just say, oh, I'm having that thought again. I don't have to believe it. It's just a thought. And it will pass on if I don't judge it or try and control it. It will just move on. When I get distracted by another thought, it will leave. But they leave faster when you leave them alone.
Yes, because you could make them grow by giving to them, giving giving the energy, like you said.
Exactly.
Because you could start to, one thought manifests another sort of negative thought towards that one thought, and then before you know it, your stomach is turning, it's taking you down, and it's creating. The illness comes from those kinds of things. That's why the practicing of the three principles, knowing how to use that in your own life, could really save your life in a lot of ways.
It can, and it's not, and it's like I said, it's just really, if I boiled it down to the essence is knowing that that thoughts are just randomly coming through you. When you lock on a thought and you stay on it too long, it can start just
Manifest.
It gets ugly. But again, if you judged yourself for it, it would just make it worse. But what I also want to talk about is the world of the form and the formless, because that's so important. Now, the world of the form is what we call the physical world, the dense, this thing here, this mic, people, things, cars, houses. That's the physical world. And that's the world of form. And underneath that is the world of the formless, which is the spiritual realm. And that's the energy in which all form comes from. It's, formless turns into form.
Okay.
But that formless energy that runs through all of us, it's what's we're all made of. We've all connected at that level. Nobody is any better than anybody else. That place of the formless is where we connect to our, divine guidance, our wisdom, our insight, new thought, inspiration, synchronicity. I mean, so many incredible things come from that place. And that's the place we're all equal.
Right.
And what I say that for is that, the human condition of us, believing our thoughts, these thoughts just rush through all of us. And when we believe our thoughts and they make it mean something about us, like, well, I keep having insecure thoughts. I keep hearing the thought that I'm not good enough. That must mean I'm not good enough. You don't own that thought. That's a random thought that comes through anybody.
Right.
And what we do is, if a thought happens a lot, we give it more value than it is. We give it more permanence. We say that must mean something about us. If I keep having this thought. And what I'm trying to say is that those are just human thoughts. Doesn't mean anything about us.
And when thoughts that, a lot of times, distracting thoughts come from worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. Like an event or a job-related thing or meeting somebody new or, getting up and speaking. It's all this you can place a lot of energy on thought that can kind of bring you down based on something that hasn't happened, on worrying.
Well, exactly. And all worry is doing is going back into the past and going into the future. So when you have definitely, unless you literally have that saber-toothed tiger here in the studio, we are not in danger right now.
Well, then you would know better. Yeah.
Well, exactly. But it's our thoughts. Yeah. And when we go back into history and go, but this happened and this happened and this made me feel this way.
So, of course, it's going to happen because it's the what ifs, right?
Exactly. But that's going into the past and it's going into the future. Very, very rarely when we're in the present moment are we ever distressed, ever. All our distress comes from our thinking. And it comes from that busy, busy mind. So if you can just realize that those thoughts just will flow and you stay centered and you stay still, you will have thoughts, but they're wonderful, fresh thoughts in the moment.
Yeah, because we have to plan.
Well,
we have to use our thoughts to plan.
Exactly.
We have to do our work, and we have to.
We do, but if we over stress and over plan and get ourselves all
so
locked.
Many people like that. Yeah, and I'm sure I've been accused of it.
Yeah, but just getting locked into those. I, as this human being, have to figure it all out and strategizing and stressing and planning, and you sort of clutter your mind. I'm going to use my wonderful little snow globe here to demonstrate that.
Right.
So
okay.
So I don't know if you can all see this here, but this is what the mind is when we
you're on camera. You can see it.
Lock down into we've got to figure it out, and what does this mean, and why am I still doing this, and that's called busy mind.
Wow,
right there.
That scares me.
Yeah, because you can't see anything.
Yeah,
you're in a state of stress, anxiety. Or depression or whatever. You can't think clearly, you can't think straight. The more that you just trust that those thoughts will flow, and that when you're connecting to that beautiful, peaceful place from within, you will get, as I said, incredible insight, incredible wisdom, incredible guidance, clarity, and it's all specific to you. We all have this. See how it's beautiful and clearing here? We all have access to that amazing divine guidance within us. So as three principles practitioners, we don't coach, we don't guide you, we don't advise you. We just keep pointing you back in the direction of your own innate wisdom inside of you.
So that takes practice, though, correct?
Yes.
In terms of you not letting those thoughts take over on the what ifs.
Well, I always say we have a built-in alarm system, which is wonderful, which is called when you feel yucky, you know that you're believing some negative thoughts.
Yeah.
It's there already.
Okay.
It really, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Is if you feel horrible, you're feeling in pain or upset or sadness, that's just a reminder that you're listening to your thinking at that point.
And that's just consciousness of being aware that that's
you know what
we're when you start to feel bad, where's this coming from? Oh, I created it.
Just say it's coming from my thinking.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there are events out there that aren't, that you shouldn't be thinking about, that are not good. But, say you're in an abusive marriage. You can be in an abusive marriage. Now, if you're using your head and your thinking, you might start going, well, this feels awful. I feel like I'm being abused, but I can't leave because how will I, make money? And I'd rather be here than be alone. And you can start playing all these thoughts.
That's right.
You're not going to have any clarity of what to do.
To be able to do the right thing.
To be able to hear what's right for you. So the more that in that moment, so it's not denying the external event, but it's understanding that your confusion and your pain is coming from the thoughts you're having around that event. And the more that you can get quiet and not let yourself get carried away with fear of the future, fear of the past, or anything like that, the more that you can get quiet and drop down into that place, that's where you will have that incredible guidance and wisdom to really let you know that there are options for you.
Well, that's so that's so important, because fear is that accumulation of these thoughts on this is what it is. It's that place that we go that brings us even deeper into the darkness, and then it paralyzes us, and then we can't take action on what needs to be done. And then that same mantra that goes over and over, if it's one particular thing that's bringing you down, it's not the thing on the outside, it's you on the inside that's bringing you down.
It is, and it can, again, because somebody might just look at that situation and go, I'm getting the hell out of here. This is abusive. I'm not sticking around. And just move on.
That's right.
I just really feel clear about it and very clear. Another person might stay there and suffer the abuse because they're thinking, I can't survive on my own. This is, nobody else will love me. This is all that I can get. Then another person might say, this is completely unacceptable. I'm going to say that we need to get help. And unless we get help, I'm prepared to leave.
Right.
So there are many different reactions that can be had.
Handling it.
But when we get caught in that thought storm, we can't see clearly.
Well, you get paralyzed.
We get paralyzed, exactly. You can't see clearly what that next action step
forward.
should be.
You get stuck. You don't grow. You don't make the changes that are needed to change.
Well, you don't get the guidance.
Yeah.
Because our brains are like computers. We only have experience from the past or what we've read, and we only have, our imagination of what's going to happen in the future is based on the past. So again, it's a loop. There's no fresh thought. There's no inspiration. There's no wisdom coming through saying, hey, listen to this. How about this? Because you're just like
you're
this,
cluttered.
Cluttered.
Yeah. Interesting when you actually stop and think about that, because it's so true. It's so potent and so true. But we don't give thought to our thoughts. This does that for us.
And again, another thing I want to mention is just like the physical body heals itself. I mean, we think if we break a bone, it's the cast that helps it heal. No, it just lines up the bones so the body can do what it's meant to do, which is to heal itself. Just the same as a scratch, we think it's the ointment and the Band-Aid we put on that made it heal. It's our body healing itself. The only time
unless we keep scratching
at it. Keep picking at it, it will get worse.
It will get worse.
So the psyche is the same. Our psyche heals itself. So if we quiet the mind and find that place of inner peace that is within all of us, I mean, that's our natural state of being. So when we're upset or in addictive thinking or addictive behaviors and things like that, and, sometimes, we think that, again, it's the power is outside of us. I need a drink to calm down, or I need a pill to calm me down.
Or I need a piece of cake because that will make me happy. Yeah.
Those are just thoughts.
Yeah.
So those addictions or habits that we have, they're not who we are.
Right, but it's interesting because our childhood has really created that, because as kids, they were they were prizes.
Yeah.
They were for doing something good. Oh, here's a piece of candy if
Yeah.
you stay quiet. Here's this
Yeah.
if you do that.
Yeah, but
you
again,
know, and
Debbie, just using you as an example, I mean, some people grow up in a house where love or treats or rewards
Mm-hmm.
are given in food, and sometimes some parents abuse the food and they become unhealthy and overweight and things like that. Now, sometimes people will, as children will grow up, and as adults they will mirror what their parents did.
absolutely.
And you can say, well, it's not their fault because they were brought up in that environment. But your example, you had ill health and eating
Processed food
processed
growing up
food
in my house
around
was
you.
and a lot of sickness and death actually.
And you, instead of becoming like your parents, you actually went, I'm not going to become that.
That's not what I didn't want to
Exactly.
do.
So we can say it's our outside environment. I mean, we're impacted it. I'm not denying we're not impacted
Yeah,
it. But
that's-
ultimately, the thoughts that you had separated you out from continuing that pattern.
That's right.
Whereas for somebody else, their thoughts might be, well, this is the way life is.
Yeah.
This is the way my parents did it. This is the way
And they
I'm going to
just
do it.
settle in. I know. I get a lot of that with my clients too. Well, I grew up this way.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it has to stay. And I can't say it. I would need them to discover
No,
that
exactly.
for themselves. But
Exactly.
that's how, as a coach, that's what I help them do.
Yeah.
Is that they have the power within them to make that change.
Because
And
that was just a thought they had.
I was just going to
It's a
say.
thought they had at one point.
But
Maybe
that's
when
where
they
they're
were very,
supposed to be.
Yeah, when they were very young, and instead of questioning that thought and just saying, well, that's an interesting thought that came in, is it true?
Yeah.
They just keep playing it, and all of a sudden for them it becomes truth.
That's right.
And whereas in fact it's just a thought.
Yeah, and it's so healthy
Yeah.
to know this.
I wanted to
know?
give you an example of thought in my life, which I grew up always believing that I was claustrophobic, and I was terrified of water. And
you were.
Yeah,
I don't think
of
I
the
knew that
ocean.
about it.
Oh
you.
yes,
About
yeah.
oh I don't think I
Well,
did. Okay.
anyway,
Now I
but
do.
because we haven't been in the water together on a lift.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, so last year, after I, known about the principles for about a year, and I would challenge my thinking, I actually was lying on a beach in Ibiza with my sister, and we're lying there, and she goes, oh my gosh, she goes, it's such a shame that you're claustrophobic and afraid of water. And I said, oh, why? And she goes, well, if we can take these little canoes, we paddle out of this bay and come around, and there's this tunnel that you paddle into, but you have to lay flat on the canoe because the roof of the cave basically is so low that you can't sit up on the canoe. You paddle through, and then you get to this open cave where this shard of light shines down, and it's so beautiful. And I mean, this cave is so deep, and I began to feel my anxiety growing a bit.
Starting to hyperventilate the thought of it.
Yeah, and then she kept saying, oh, it's so amazing. You'll never get to share that with me. And I'm lying there on the beach thinking, if this is really true, and these are just thoughts, and I've had a thought all my life rather, that I've just believed. Mm-hmm. Maybe it doesn't have to be true. So I sat up and I said, let's go. And she goes, no way. Oh, you're going to freak out. No, you can't do this. And we did. We paddled out. I laid out. First of all, I said, how long does this tunnel go for?
Yeah.
She goes about 10 minutes.
It's a long time.
It's a long
That's
time.
like-
Anyway, bottom line is I did it. Because the whole
Good
time,
girl.
if I started to feel that reaction coming up in me, I just said, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
It'll pass.
Wow,
And-
so you
and it-
utilized it.
I
That's great.
absolutely got to experience something that I never would have experienced before, because I was prepared to say, or challenge that it was just a thought.
And how was it?
It was incredible.
Was it?
And
so worth it. Aren't you glad you
worth
did it?
But probably it wasn't even the cave and experiencing that was so amazing. It was the feeling I had inside of myself
That's
that I
right.
wasn't living such a limited life anymore.
Right.
That
You have
I
two
could-
rewards.
Yes,
that
exactly.
you got out of that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so that's probably opened a lot of doors for you with claustrophobia and fear
yes.
of water.
Yes,
and,
I don't even think about it anymore. And but I have so many stories to illustrate. I used to, sometimes drink a little more than I should. Like at night, I would say, oh, I need my reward, or I have a glass of wine.
Yeah, I deserve this.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And now I'll just say, oh, I'm having that thought. it's probably not going to be there very long, and guaranteed it's gone within like
Yeah.
a minute.
People could use that for weight loss,
They
too,
could do it
with
for
food.
anything.
Yeah.
For anything. Because we
really is a
keep
fleeting-
attributing our well-being to what's happening on this outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we have a healthy bank account, whether we're in a good relationship, whether we are relaxed because we're having some alcohol or a drink, or we're comforted because we're eating our so-called comfort food.
Right.
All of those feelings, nothing is from the outside in. It's all from the thought we have
the
in that
inside
moment.
out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh, when you really put it like that, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It's so potent. It's so true.
And the other thing I did want to mention is just as much as we all walk around in our thought-created reality, everybody else does too. So,
Yeah, and we don't really give a lot of just a lot of thought to that. You
No,
know,
we don't.
we just assume that people are the way they are, and we
we believe that there's a world out there that we're all viewing, and that usually we believe that our view of the world is the right view.
Yeah.
And if somebody else is not viewing it the same way we are, we feel like, what's wrong with you? How can you not
Yeah. Well,
have
boy,
the same
do we have
view?
some leadership right now like that. That's,
Well, exactly.
Yeah, it's such a trickle-down effect, too, to have
So-
that kind of
Yeah, so what
ego.
I'm saying is what you do, why is this so helpful? Not only it's helpful in all areas of life. I mean, I've touched on addiction, it's helpful in business, it's helpful in relationships,
Oh, I
in
can
parenting, in so many areas.
Yeah.
But just a brief one, because we are going to do a series of these talks where we're going to really go deep into each thing.
Yeah.
But when you recognize that there is no real out there, that your perception of reality is actually created in the way that you're looking at life, through the lens that you're looking in, everybody else is doing the same thing. So you really sort of let
You have
go.
to kind of give them a pass in some ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
just
they're-
as you give yourself a pass, you give
yeah,
everybody else
that's
one.
one. Yeah.
Because there is,
Get it.
you really just go, okay, just like I am, they are viewing it through their lens.
That's right.
And there is no real right or wrong out there.
Yeah.
It's just the way you
So
perceive
so again, we're getting back to it, but really it's fear that creates the need to be right, or to
I think it's
I think that to be bossy, or to tell people to
I think it's
pawn
ignorance.
off what you're
I just think it, and I don't mean
ignorance.
ignorance in a bad way. I just mean
Okay. Fear and
literally.
ignorance kind of.
Well, no. I just think
they
it's
work together.
ignorance in the sense of ignorance that they don't understand how the world works.
Mm-hmm.
They still believe that there's an event out there that's happening, that's
Okay.
real, and
Mm-hmm.
the way I'm seeing it is the right way, and the way you're seeing it is the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they really fully understood the inside-out reality as opposed to the outside-in, they wouldn't have that expectation, and they wouldn't believe they were right. They would just realize that what they're believing is their truth.
Their truth.
But there is
Boy,
no
would we
universal
have
truth.
world peace if everybody
Yes.
could practice this.
100%.
How do you get the word out on this,
Well, that's what we're trying to do here. I mean,
Okay.
it's being used in so many different arenas right now. I mean, this is, I'm working with some of the most incredible mentors, I'm a mentee rather of teachers that first came across this understanding, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, people like that saw that this understanding brought so much more healing to the world than regular therapy. I mean, they say if you've got a burnt hand, therapy is like you have a wound, a childhood wound. It's like putting a burnt hand back on the stovetop and saying, well, if we keep revisiting it, it's going to make it better. Well, sometimes it doesn't work that way. And so the understanding has been used in schools. It's been used in Chicago, in gangs. It's used in prisons. It's used in addiction centers.
Wow.
It's absolutely taking, I mean, I love
Taking
therapy.
from
It
the
helped my
inside out.
life.
I love it.
But this has brought so much more healing.
I was going to say.
So much quicker. My relationships have improved. My parenting has improved. I don't take things so seriously. My temperament, I'm far more even-keeled. I don't get so as upset anymore. If I get upset,
And
I'm
I bet it's manifesting like you're not you're probably feeling better physically too. Like you're not getting
Absolutely.
sick anymore because
Yeah.
those kinds of, holding in and getting upset
Oh,
about
yeah.
everything, that kind of stuff just
Oh, I
manifests
used to be a
into
terrible
disease and-
ruminator. I used to really sort of, if I had an issue, I thought about it and thought
Yeah,
about it and thought about
yeah.
it. Now I can just let things go.
You need to work with one of my daughters. We'll talk.
I need to work with a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, it's very simple, and when people get the concept, you don't have to have years of therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, it does take practice because we do
That's
forget.
what I was
We
gonna say.
innocently keep thinking, well, I feel this way because
Yeah,
of.
and we put the blame on
Yeah.
somebody else, something
we
else,
attribute
or
it.
everybody out there who's,
Yeah.
here we are in LA,
and it
with
doesn't
our
have to be
driving.
people. It
and-
could be like, well, I don't have enough money in the bank. I don't have this, and this is why I'm upset. Well,
Yeah.
you know,
and it's
sometimes-
his fault, their fault, her
Yeah.
fault. Yeah,
or my
exactly.
fault even. I mean,
Yeah,
yes,
and then
we
you
blame
start, and then you beat
ourselves.
yourself up, and that's
Exactly.
no good.
I mean,
and
with
you,
this,
go
a
ahead.
it's a very gentle, loving way of knowing that we're just human, and this is the way that human beings. I mean, we say we're spiritual beings
I
having a
was
human
just going to
experience.
ask you about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to end on that
Yeah.
note. So we are human beings having a
A spiritual.
spiritual
Pierre de
existence.
Chardin, he was a
Okay.
French philosopher and professor, and that's his
We are
phrase.
spiritual beings having
Having
a human experience.
Yes.
So
And well, the end of the phrase is not spiritual beings having. I'm sorry, not human beings having a spiritual experience. So it's
Okay.
basically that, and that is what the three principles points to: is that understanding that at our core we are all perfectly happy, healthy, and whole. There's nothing that needs fixing. All of this coaching that keeps telling you that you'll be happy when you get this,
or if you do
what
that, or
your
if you-
goals, and when
yeah.
you achieve your goals, you'll be happy. It's happiness is within. Everything we need is within us. All the guidance, the wisdom, everything is within us. We don't need to be reaching out outside. So all we do as three principles practitioners is keep pointing somebody back to what's inside of them. We help them to get home to themselves.
I love that, Del.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Thank
And we will dig deeper into this to help our audience.
Yeah.
I just love this lesson. Thank
Great.
you so much.
My
Our time is
pleasure.
up, but this is
Thank
great that
you.
we got such an extreme details of the three principles, because it's really
This
important
is a broad
stuff.
brushstroke of the introduction. We
Yeah.
can go a lot deeper.
Yeah. Well, it's our show, and we can keep putting it out there. All right,
That's
everybody.
wonderful.
We want to thank you. Thank you, Del.
Thank
you for
you.
joining us today. We're going to be back next week. We're Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Del.